I have tested various ingredients and their effects on bread dough. You can find those videos in the Principles of Baking playlist. Most of those ingredients are ones that are already commonly used in bread making. A while ago, someone asked me if I could test out MSG and to see if it could be used as a replacement for salt. MSG, also known as monosodium glutamate, is a flavor enhancer. But just like salt, it also contains sodium, but quite a bit less of it. While it isn't very salty, it does add an umami flavor to foods. Umami is the fifth basic flavor, after sweet, sour, salty and bitter. As I was getting ready to make this video, I remembered that I have soy sauce in the fridge. And since we're testing out salt alternatives, why not try this too? The sodium content of MSG is around 12%, while the sodium content of soy sauce is around 17%, at least the soy sauce that I'm using. And just for reference, the sodium content of salt is around 38%. So here's what we're going to do today. We'll make 3 breads, all containing flour, yeast and water. One of them will be seasoned with MSG, the other one will be seasoned with salt, and the last one will be seasoned with soy sauce. Both the MSG and the salt doughs contain equal amounts of their respective ingredient. I calculated the amount of soy sauce according to how much salt it contains, and I deducted some water from the recipe to account for the water content in the soy sauce. You'll find all the written details in the article linked below. All 3 doughs will be made exactly the same way. I will mix the dough, leave it to bulk ferment, give it one fold halfway through bulk fermentation, then I will shape the loaves, place them in baking tins, let them proof, and then bake them. The main purpose of this test is finding out what the bread will taste like in the end. I had never used MSG in bread dough, so didn't know what to expect here. It is quite a common ingredient in Asian cooking. If you've ever had some Chinese food, you bet there was MSG in there. It is used sparingly, just to round off the flavor. Because it only contains 1/3 of the sodium compared to salt, it made the dough feel a lot looser. Salt has a tightening effect on gluten. If you've ever forgot to put salt in your bread, you would know how sticky and loose the dough could become. It gets more extensible and less elastic. And that is exactly what we will observe here. Instead of rising up, the loaf will spread out sideways. And of course, because of the lower sodium content, the MSG bread will not be as flavorful. Yes, it will taste like MSG, whatever that will taste like, we'll find out later, but it will not have that seasoned bread taste. So why would anyone even use MSG in bread dough? The person who asked me to make this video said that they would like to lower their sodium intake, which is fair enough. Most people eat too much salt. Even when we think we don't, most of the time we do. I track my daily salt intake, and I use salt quite sparingly, but even then I get quite close to the recommended limit every day. For the average person, it is not recommended to eat more than 6 grams of salt per day. That does sound like quite a lot, especially because sometimes their recommendation is 2.3 grams per day. But here is where we can get confused. The 6 gram limit refers to salt, while the 2.3 gram limit refers to pure sodium. As I mentioned earlier, salt contains about 38% sodium. 38% of 6 grams is about 2.3 grams. So when you see those two numbers, they mean exactly the same thing. I normally make my bread dough with 2% salt in Baker's percentage terms, which means that the 2% is calculated in relation to the total flour in the bread dough. In the case of these 3 recipes, I'm using 200 grams of flour, so the salt content at 2% would be 4 grams. You don't have to use 2% salt. I don't need that much bread, so I can afford it, and I like the taste I get from 2%. If you do need to lower your sodium intake, you could adjust the amount of salt in your bread dough. Just remember that as you lower the salt content, the dough will become more stretchy and less elastic. And as you can see here, the low sodium containing MSG bread, which is on the left of the screen, is a lot flatter than the other 2. The regular salt loaf is in the middle, and of course the soy sauce one is on the right. They have been in the same order throughout the video. Now it's time to compare the 3 loaves. Structure wise, we already know that the MSG bread is a little bit weak, which of course we could live with as long as it tastes good. And taste is the main thing that we are after here. So let's take a slice and give them a taste. Looking at the crumb, the MSG bread kind of resembles cake. It's a bit more spongy than the other 2. And texture wise, it also felt a little bit rougher and less soft than the other 2. I decided to try the regular salt bread first, so that I could then compare the other 2 to it. And of course, no surprises here, it just tastes like regular basic white bread. Not very exciting, but still pleasant. When trying the MSG bread, I was quite surprised. I thought that it would be at least similar to regular bread, but the MSG made the bread not taste like bread at all. There is no way I would ever use this on its own in bread dough. Maybe a combination of salt and MSG would work, but then it would beat the purpose of trying to lower your sodium intake. It would be better to simply look at what you are eating throughout the day and adjust the sodium levels in all your foods. Then you won't need to resort to mixing any weird ingredients in your bread dough. When it came to the soy sauce loaf, it had nothing to do with lowering sodium. I just wanted to test it out, see what it tastes like. It was well seasoned, it had an interesting color, but using it on its own in a lean dough like this one made some of the bitterness of the soy sauce come through. But at least it was promising, so I decided to create a proper recipe for it. We will make coffee custard soy sauce buns. To balance out the slight bitterness, I'm adding some brown sugar, butter and vanilla paste to the dough. Brown sugar and soy sauce are very good friends. And you don't have to remember all this stuff I'm talking about. Just read the written article linked below the video. But moving on with the recipe, in a bowl, combine the water, the soy sauce, the brown sugar, the yeast, the vanilla paste and the flour, then mix it to a dough. Next up, we'll make the coffee custard. Combine sugar, butter, instant coffee, half an egg, some milk, set it on high heat and cook it until it's thickened. I always use this custard recipe, it's just so simple. The only difference this time, of course, is the addition of instant coffee. Just like soy sauce, coffee has some bitterness to it, but the other ingredients balance it out. And the coffee custard together with the soy sauce bun should make for an interesting combo. Now you may ask, why did I choose this exact recipe? I created it in the same way that I create a lot of recipes. I opened up my cupboard, looked in my fridge, saw what was there and just made it up as I went along. You could use soy sauce in other bread recipes, especially savory ones. Some dark soy sauce steamed buns with a savory meat filling perhaps. Hell, you could even chuck some MSG in there. Or you could make some savory soy donuts. I'll leave all those experiments up to you. I'm just showing you what's possible. So the dough went through bulk fermentation, I divided it into 4 equal pieces, shaped it up, let it proof, and now we'll do the final shaping. This recipe was inspired by the custard-filled Norwegian skollebrød. I will link it in a written article so you can check it out too. After final proofing, the dough is stretched out, creating an indentation in the middle. Then we glaze it with egg, sprinkle it with desiccated coconut, and pipe the custard in the middle. Coconut and coffee, of course, a great combo, that's why I chose it. If you're not a fan of coconut, just leave it off. Although I suspect that not many of you will be making this bread anyway. After around 20 minutes in the oven, these things should be nicely golden brown and ready. I must say they look a bit funky with that dark custard in the middle, but don't let the looks deceive you. These things turned out really good, especially for something that I came up with in like 2 minutes. The bread is super soft and light and squishy. The custard is nice and creamy and adds a lot of moisture to this bake. And the flavors are fantastic. I can still taste the faint flavor of soy sauce in the background. It works so well together with the coffee, custard and the coconut. As always, I encourage you to experiment, because that is the best way to learn anything. Check out more videos like this one by clicking the link on the screen right now. And as ever, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.